He married a beautiful stranger. The next morning, she wasn't in any record of existence. It started like every impossible love story, with a coincidence that didn't feel like one. Michael Hayes wasn't the kind of man who believed in fate. At 33, he was a quiet architect from Portland. Kind, private, the sort who spent his weekends sketching forgotten buildings and drinking coffee that had gone cold. After losing his fiancée 3 years ago in a car crash, love had become a language he no longer spoke. Until that night at the art exhibit, the gallery was small, filled with the scent of oil paint and rain from the open door. That's when he saw her, standing in front of a painting of a storm-torn lighthouse. Long dark hair fell over her shoulders, eyes the color of rain clouds, a soft scar near her collarbone catching the light. She turned, smiled, and said softly, "It's beautiful, isn't it? The kind of place that remembers people." He didn't know her name yet, but something inside him recognized her, like a song he'd heard long ago. They talked for hours about architecture, old cities, forgotten places. She said her name was Elena Ward, a travel writer who never stayed anywhere for too long. Her voice had a strange calmness, like someone who'd already said goodbye too many times. When the gallery lights dimmed, she walked him outside. Rain started to fall. Without a word, she took his hand and said, "Don't let me disappear." He didn't. They spent the next month together. Every night a new story. Every morning like a borrowed dream. She never talked about her family or her past or where she lived before. Michael didn't ask because some silences are too perfect to break. One evening, while they watched the sunset from his apartment balcony, she whispered, "Do you believe people can find each other again, even after losing themselves?" He smiled. "I think I just did." That night, he asked her to marry him. No grand gestures, no audience, just two broken souls finding a reason to stay. She looked at him, eyes glistening, and said softly, "Yes, but promise me one thing. If I ever disappear, don't try to find me." He laughed nervously. "Why would you say that?" But she didn't answer. She just kissed him. Long, quiet, and final, like the kind of goodbye that hides inside a hello. They were married 2 weeks later. Small ceremony, no guests from her side, just a white dress, a trembling smile, and vows whispered like secrets. That night he held her close, whispering, "You're real, right?" She smiled sleepily against his chest. "For tonight, I am." The next morning, when Michael woke up, the side of the bed was cold. Her clothes, her phone, her purse, all gone. He called her number. Disconnected. He went to the courthouse to collect the marriage certificate. They had no record of an Elena Ward. Her signature gone from the papers. Her name erased from every document. Her photograph missing from his phone. Only one thing remained, a wedding ring on his finger and another lying on her pillow. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, warm, golden, and painfully normal. But the bed beside Michael was empty. Her pillow still held the faint shape of her head. Her scent still lingered in the sheets. Lavender, salt, and rain. He smiled at first. Maybe she went for a walk. Maybe she was getting breakfast. The kind of thoughts people use to hide the first flash of dread. He made coffee, waited an hour, two, checked his phone, no messages. He tried calling her, but the number gave a flat, mechanical tone. "This line has been disconnected." That's when he noticed the first strange thing. Her toothbrush was gone, her clothes, her suitcase, the ring he'd slipped onto her finger just last night, missing. Only her wedding band remained, lying perfectly centered on the pillow, as if placed there intentionally. Michael drove to the courthouse, heart racing. Maybe it was a clerical mistake, he thought. Maybe he spelled her name wrong. But the clerk typed for 10 minutes, checked again, and looked up with polite confusion. "Sir, there's no marriage license under that name. Not yesterday, not this month, not ever." He showed her the marriage certificate he'd picked up after the ceremony. But the name Elena Ward was gone, completely blank. Just white space where ink should have been. The officiant, Pastor Reynolds, didn't remember either. "You sure you're not mixing it up, son? You came alone that day. Said it was symbolic. Healing, I think your word was." Michael's stomach twisted. "That's not true. She was there. She stood right here. You blessed us." The pastor only looked at him with pity. The photographer, deleted files, corrupted folder, every photo from that day gone. He went back to the gallery, desperate. The place where they met. The painting was still there, the storm-torn lighthouse. But the gallery owner, a woman named Claire, tilted her head when he asked about Elena. "Sorry, sir. That exhibit closed weeks ago. You were here alone that night. You stayed until closing. I remember, because I had to ask you to leave." His chest tightened. No, she was with me. Dark hair, gray eyes. She touched that painting right there. The woman's expression softened, like someone speaking to a patient in pain. "I think you should get some rest." He stumbled out into the rain, the city spinning around him, faces blurred, sounds muffled. Everywhere he looked, the world was erasing her, Her emails bounced back. Her name didn't exist on any database, any ID, any passport registry. He even checked travel magazines. No Eleanor Ward had ever published an article, written a story, or even had an online footprint. But his apartment told a different truth. Her mug still sat on the counter, her handwriting still on a sticky note. Back by morning, don't forget to breathe. Her favorite book still open on the table, a pressed white rose marking the page. He clung to those things like lifelines, proof that he wasn't insane. That night, unable to sleep, he went through his phone again, desperate to find her photo, maybe in the cloud, maybe in an old message. But every image was gone, replaced by gray squares, except one. A single image remained, one he didn't remember taking. It showed his apartment balcony, empty. Only the faint outline of a woman's shadow remained, blurred at the edges, fading toward the light. He dropped the phone, breath shaking. Then came the knock, soft, 3 times. He froze. Slowly, he opened the door, but no one was there. Only a letter slipped under the crack. No return address, no signature, just a single sentence written in her handwriting. You weren't supposed to look for me. Michael's pulse pounded in his ears. He ran outside, scanning the hall, the street. Empty. The rain was falling harder now, echoing the same rhythm as her words. Back inside, he held the letter under the lamp. But as the paper warmed, the ink began to fade. Within seconds, the words vanished, gone. He looked at the wedding ring still on the pillow and whispered, voice cracking, "You're real. You have to be real." But the walls stayed silent, and somewhere outside, through the rain and thunder, a faint whisper answered back, so soft he almost missed it. I was. Michael hadn't slept in 2 days. His apartment looked like the inside of a fever dream. Lights half dimmed, curtains drawn, her letter lying in pieces on the floor like ashes. The world outside went on as usual, but inside him, time had stopped. Every noise felt too loud. Every silence felt too long. He tried telling himself this was trauma, the mind's way of coping with loss. But then again, how do you lose someone who never existed? That question kept looping in his head, over and over, until the answer began to sound like madness. That's when he heard it, a faint crackle. The sound came from the corner of his living room, the old analog radio he hadn't touched in years. It wasn't even plugged in, yet it was humming softly, like it had woken up on its own. Static filled the room. Low, electric, alive. Michael stood frozen, heart thudding against his ribs. Then, through the white noise came something else. A voice, soft, familiar. Michael, he stepped closer. Elena, the static hissed, broke, then came again, clearer this time. Don't look. For me. He stumbled back, pulse racing. No, this isn't real. I'm losing my mind. But the voice didn't stop. It grew more fragmented, like someone speaking through layers of storm and distance. You weren't supposed to remember. Michael grabbed the radio, shaking it. Where are you? What happened to you? For a moment, everything went silent. Then the voice whispered one last word, the same way she used to say goodnight. Home. The static cut out. The room went dark. Michael stood there, shaking. The air felt colder, heavier, like the room had inhaled something unseen. He checked the radio's cord, still unplugged. He pressed his hands against his face, whispering, I'm hallucinating, that's all, just grief. But then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new message. He opened it, and the blood drained from his face. It was a photo of himself, standing exactly where he was right now, staring at the unplugged radio. Timestamp 10 seconds ago. He turned around. Nothing. Every shadow in the room looked like her. He opened his laptop, searching Elena Ward again, but something new appeared this time. A single article. Title, Missing Woman Found Dead After Storm. Lighthouse Point 2017. Her face, her eyes, her scar. The same woman, but that was impossible. That was 8 years ago. He clicked the link, but the page glitched, turned blank, and the text twisted into a single line before vanishing entirely. You promised you wouldn't look. He slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. Outside, thunder cracked, and through the rain he swore he saw her standing at the far end of the street, barefoot, drenched, her white dress clinging to her like a memory that refused to fade. He ran outside, but by the time he reached her, she was gone. Only the faint imprint of wet footsteps remained on the pavement, leading nowhere. That night, he couldn't stop thinking about the words she said through the radio, home. And in that moment, Michael realized something terrifying. The storm-torn lighthouse, the one from the painting where they first met. It wasn't just art, it was a real place, and that's where he was going next. Because if Eleanor's voice was trapped between the static and the storm, maybe that's where she still was, waiting for him to come home. The drive took 6 hours. 6 hours of winding coastal roads and unanswered questions echoing in Michael's head like ghosts that refused to quiet down. The GPS led him to a small seaside town in Oregon called Hollow's Edge. A quiet, wind-bitten place, the kind that always felt one storm away from vanishing. As he drove in, A rusted road sign leaned sideways, half buried in weeds. Lighthouse Point, 3 miles, closed to public. Fog rolled in thick from the ocean, swallowing the cliffs in a silver haze. The air smelled like rain and salt and something faintly metallic, like old sorrow. He parked near a boarded-up diner. The locals, few as they were, gave him the kind of looks reserved for outsiders who didn't belong. When he asked about the lighthouse, the bartender laughed. Not kindly. That old ruin? Been gone 8 years. Lightning took it down in the 17 storm. Some say it was cursed long before that. Michael's hand tightened around his glass. Did anyone die? The man paused, eyeing him carefully. A woman stayed out there alone. Nobody knew her real name. Locals called her the Widow of the Light. They say she wrote letters to someone who never came. Michael's throat went dry. Elena. The bartender froze mid-wipe. You knew her? Michael just nodded. Once. The man looked uneasy now. Then you should leave, friend. That place doesn't forget, it takes. But Michael didn't leave. He couldn't. He drove through the fog toward the cliffs, where the sea screamed below like something alive. The road ended at a rusted gate, property of the coastal authority. He climbed over. The lighthouse ruins stood crooked against the storm, half swallowed by vines and fog. The white paint had peeled away, exposing ribs of charred stone. The keeper's quarters beside it were collapsed, windows shattered, the door hanging open like a mouth mid-scream. Inside, the air was damp and heavy. Old papers littered the floor, burned edges, fragments of letters. He knelt, brushing ash away until he found one that still had words. If he ever comes, tell him I waited. His breath hitched. The handwriting, it was hers. Lightning flashed, and for a second, he saw her, standing by the staircase, barefoot, her hair dripping like seaweed, eyes hollow but full of recognition. You came back. He stumbled to his feet, heart slamming. Elena, please, I just need to understand. But she didn't move closer. She just smiled sadly. You weren't supposed to find me. Then thunder cracked, and she was gone. The only sound was the radio in the corner. Old, rusted, but somehow alive again, humming faintly beneath the wind. He approached it slowly. The same static, the same whisper threading through the storm. Michael, you have to remember how it ended. He turned the dial. Tell me, please, tell me the truth. For a moment, the static shifted into faint music. A wedding march, slowed down and warped. Then her voice again, soft and broken. You didn't save me. The walls groaned. The air turned ice cold. The light flickered. And suddenly he was seeing something else. The same lighthouse, but whole again. Rain hammering the glass. Elena standing at the top, wind tearing through her dress, her hand reaching out toward him, as if through time itself. He blinked, and it was gone. Only smoke, only silence. He fell to his knees, whispering into the dark. What happened to you, Elena? Who are you? From somewhere deep within the ruins came the faint creak of a door, and then her voice, clear, close, whispering right beside his ear. You already know. The light above flickered once more, and he saw his reflection in a broken shard of glass. Behind him, for just a heartbeat, stood Elena, smiling. Then the reflection blinked and she was gone again. The storm had calmed by morning, but the sea still roared, angry, restless, like it remembered everything. Michael hadn't slept. He'd spent the night pacing the ruins, searching for anything that could prove what he saw. Every time he blinked, he saw her silhouette in the fog, a flash of white, a whisper of her name, and then nothing. He didn't leave. He couldn't. By midday, he began exploring the collapsed quarters behind the lighthouse, where the old keeper once lived. The door creaked open, with a sound like a sigh. The air smelled of mildew, salt, and burnt wood. Every step stirred ashes that had been waiting years to be disturbed. On the far wall, half buried beneath a fallen beam, he found a rusted trunk. It took all his strength to pry it open. Inside were waterlogged clothes, an old lantern, and something wrapped in oilcloth, a book. He unwrapped it carefully. The cover was leather, warped by age. The name faintly carved on the front, Thomas Ward. Keeper, 1912. Ward, the same last name as Elena. Michael's pulse quickened as he opened it. The pages were brittle, ink smudged by time, but the words bled through like whispers. The sea keeps her, always her. She comes when the storms rise. Every time I see her face, she's different, but her eyes, God help me, they're always the same. She says her name is Elena. He read faster, heart pounding. The entries continued, decades of them. Each one written by a different hand, different keepers, different years, but always the same story. A woman appearing by the light during storms, falling in love with the keeper, and then vanishing, taking him with her. Sometimes she drowned, sometimes she burned, sometimes she simply disappeared. The last entry, dated August 12, 2017, made his breath stop. She came again tonight. Same eyes, same voice. She said she found him, the one she'd been waiting for. Says this time it's different. Says his name is Michael. Michael dropped the book, stumbling back as if the words had burned him. No, it couldn't be. 2017, the same year the lighthouse burned down. He flipped through the final pages, desperate. The ink had bled, but one line remained, underlined twice. If she ever finds him, the circle will close, and the sea will take them both. Lightning flashed, and the wind howled through the broken windows like laughter. He felt it before he saw it. The shift in the air, the sudden drop in temperature. Then a whisper, barely audible. You read it. He turned. Elena stood at the doorway, hair clinging wet to her face, eyes shimmering with something between love and sorrow. You weren't supposed to know, she said softly. Michael took a step closer. What are you, Elena? Tears welled in her eyes, though they looked almost silver in the light. I was someone who waited too long, and the sea doesn't forgive those who wait. He reached out to touch her hand, but his fingers passed through mist. Her voice trembled. You shouldn't have come here. Now it remembers you too. Thunder cracked outside, shaking the ground. The old radio in the corner sparked to life again, her voice echoing from it in perfect sync, speaking the same words she whispered aloud. It remembers you. It remembers you. It remembers you. The windows burst open, the sea wind roaring in, scattering pages of the journal into the air like dying birds. Michael fell to his knees, shouting above the storm, Elena, what do you want from me? Her answer came in fragments, carried by the storm, the static, the sound of the sea itself. I want you to remember how we ended. The light above flickered one last time, and for the briefest second he saw it. A vision burned into his mind. The lighthouse fully restored. Two figures standing on the balcony, him and Elena. Lightning striking the sea, her hand slipping from his, her scream lost to the waves. Then, darkness. When he opened his eyes, she was gone, and so was the journal. Only one page remained on the floor, soaked and torn, with 4 words still visible. It was never over. Michael drove back through the storm in silence. The road behind him felt heavier than the one ahead, like the sea itself was pulling him back. The wind howled against his car windows, whispering her name between the static of the wipers. Elena, Elena. He kept telling himself it wasn't real. None of it. But the smell of salt on his hands said otherwise. So did the faint bruise on his wrist where she'd touched him. By the time he reached his apartment in Portland, the sun was already sinking. The city looked unreal through the rain, glass towers glowing like candles about to die. He stumbled inside, exhausted, clothes still damp, head spinning with the voice of the storm. Everything was exactly how he'd left it. The unmade bed, the unpaid bills, the framed pictures of a life he no longer recognized. But then something new caught his eye. A photograph. It sat neatly on the coffee table in a frame he'd never seen before. A wedding photo. His breath stopped. He was in it, standing on a beach, wearing a gray suit, and beside him, Elena, in a white dress, laughing. He stared, frozen. His heart began to pound so hard it hurt. The date on the bottom corner made his stomach twist. August 12th, 2017. The same day the lighthouse burned. The same day she died. No, he whispered, stepping back. He grabbed the frame, shaking it. This isn't real. It can't be. But then something inside the frame moved. Not the photo. The reflection in the glass behind him. He turned sharply. The apartment was empty, but the air had gone cold, and the lights began to flicker like a heartbeat out of sync. He looked back at the photo. Now the reflection showed both of them, standing behind him, her hand resting on his shoulder, her smile gentle, knowing, infinite. You promised, she whispered. He dropped the frame. The glass shattered, scattering shards across the floor. The photo burned where it landed, curling inward until it was nothing but ash. The room went dark. For a few long seconds, there was only the sound of his own breathing. Then the faint hum of his old answering machine blinked red. One new message. He pressed play. Static. Then her voice. Michael, don't you remember what you said at the altar? The message ended. He fell to his knees, trembling. His reflection in the broken glass flickered again, but this time it wasn't him. It was them, standing together in front of the lighthouse. Waves crashing behind, her veil blowing through his hand like mist. And then faintly, in the corner of the reflection, the words scratched into the glass itself, letters forming slowly, like a hand unseen was writing from the other side. Come back to the light. He turned away, tears in his eyes. Why me, Elena? From the darkness behind him came her whisper again, closer now, tender, loving and unbearable, because you're the only one who never left me. The city lights outside flickered out one by one, and somewhere far away on the coast, the dead lighthouse began to glow again for the first time since 2017. Sleep never came that night. Michael sat on the floor beside the shattered frame, staring at the faint outline of ash burned into the carpet, the ghost of the photograph that shouldn't exist. Outside, thunder crawled across the sky like something alive. By 3 a.m., the city felt hollow. The streetlights blinked in rhythm with his pulse, flickering, dimming, dying, and every few minutes, the phone on the counter buzzed once. No number. No message, just a pulse, like a heartbeat from the other side. When he finally stood, it wasn't a decision. It was instinct or maybe surrender. He packed nothing, just grabbed his keys and drove. The storm waited for him. The same road, the same winding cliffs. Only this time, the GPS didn't guide him. The light did. Far ahead, cutting through the fog, the lighthouse, glowing, alive. His hands trembled on the wheel. The last time he saw it, it was nothing but ruins and ash. But now, the tower stood whole again, shining through the storm like a memory rebuilt. When he reached the gate, it was already open. The same rusted sign, property of the Coastal Authority, now perfectly clean, as if freshly painted. He stepped out, the rain soaking through his jacket. The air shimmered faintly, humming, electric. Every step closer, the world grew quieter. No thunder. No wind, only the rhythmic, pulsing hum of the light above. He touched the door. It opened before he could push. Inside, pristine, wood floors gleaming, the smell of sea and oil lamps. No ruin, no decay, everything restored, like stepping back in time. And there, on the staircase, stood Elena, alive. She wore the same white dress from the photograph. Her hair moved softly in the unseen breeze, her eyes calm but endless, like deep water that could drown or forgive. "You came back," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "I had to." She smiled faintly. "You always do." He stepped closer. "What is this place?" Her voice trembled. "It's where promises go when they're broken." He shook his head. "I don't understand." She turned toward the window, looking out at the raging sea below. "You weren't supposed to remember. Every lifetime we try again, and every time you find me, too late." Lifetime. She looked at him now, tears like pearls slipping down her face. "The fire wasn't your first mistake, Michael. You've been coming back for 100 years. You just don't remember how it began." He felt dizzy, clutching the rail. "Then tell me." Elena took his hand, warm, real. "It began the day you left me to save the light." A flash, images flooding his mind. Another life, the year 1912, the same tower, him in a keeper's coat, her running through the rain, begging him not to go. Lightning striking the sea, the light exploding into fire, her scream, his name, then silence. He gasped, collapsing to his knees as the memory burned through him. "I left you." Elena knelt beside him, her voice barely a whisper. "You tried to save them, the ship, the light, but you forgot me." He looked up at her, broken, and now she brushed his cheek. "Now the light remembers, both of us." Outside, the storm cracked open, waves rising higher, thunder echoing through the bones of the world. The lighthouse beam flared white hot, flooding the room with impossible light. "If you go now," she said softly, "you can end it. The sea will forget. We'll be free." He stared at her, tears mixing with rain. "And if I stay?" She smiled, sad, eternal. "Then it begins again." The floor trembled, the sea screamed, and somewhere above, the great lantern shattered. The moment the lantern shattered, everything changed. The light that had once guided ships home now burst apart, like glass rain. Fragments of white fire spiraling through the air, burning and beautiful. The lighthouse moaned as if alive, its bones cracking under the weight of time collapsing. Michael covered his head as debris fell, the sound of the sea roaring through the cracks in the floor. The walls flickered. Stone, then flame, then stone again, the tower phasing between centuries. He could hear voices, dozens of them, echoing through the light, men shouting, women crying, and her, always her. "Michael, you promised. It's time to remember." He stumbled toward Elena, who stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos, untouched by flame, her dress flowing like smoke. The air around her shimmered. "Elena, we have to get out." She looked at him with that same heartbreaking calm. "Out? There is no out. This place isn't the cage, Michael. We are." Lightning struck the sea below, splitting it open for one impossible heartbeat. Through it, Michael saw the reflection of the lighthouse, except it wasn't the tower at all. It was them, their faces, their hands locked in firelight, the night they first burned. "Every storm, every lifetime, it finds us again," she whispered, "because we never let go." The floor trembled violently. The radio crackled to life from somewhere in the ruins, blaring their wedding vows through the static, warped, echoing, broken. "In this life and the next." Michael pressed his hands over his ears. "Make it stop." Elena stepped closer, her voice trembling with something almost human. "You can stop it. You always could. You just never do. How? Her eyes glimmered. You have to let me go. He shook his head. I can't. I won't lose you again. She smiled sadly. Then the sea will remember, and it will start again. The tower split down the center, water rushing in from below, swallowing the stairs, rising fast. The wind screamed through the glass, tearing everything apart. Michael reached for her, but this time she didn't pull away. She stepped into his arms, her body weightless, cold as the ocean. You kept your promise, she whispered against his chest. You came back. He closed his eyes, holding her tighter. Then take me with you. Her tears soaked through his shirt. Only they weren't tears. They were salt water. It's already taking you, she whispered. The light above them pulsed one last time, blinding, pure, and then the floor gave way. They fell, through water, through time, through every version of the night that ever was. He saw them, 1912, 1947, 1983, 2017, always her, always him, always ending the same way, the storm, the fire, the sea, and then silence. When Michael opened his eyes, he was standing on the beach, dawn breaking, the storm gone, the lighthouse a black silhouette against the horizon, whole but cold. Beside him, no footprints, no Elena, only a single shell resting in the sand. Inside it, the faint echo of her voice. You remembered. He lifted it to his ear and heard the sea breathing softly. Then, from far out on the water, the light flickered once more, faint, distant, almost human. The world was too still that morning. The air smelled like salt and smoke. Michael stood barefoot on the damp sand, staring at the black silhouette of the lighthouse. It looked so harmless now, just a relic against the pale horizon. Yet every time he blinked, he swore he saw it breathe. He tried to tell himself it was over. The storm, the curse, Elena. He whispered it like a prayer. It's over. It's over. But the sea didn't answer. It only sighed. For days, Michael stayed in the small motel on the edge of the coast. He didn't eat much, didn't talk. The locals had long stories about that tower, how it burned and rebuilt itself, how keepers went missing, how sometimes the light moved against the wind. But when he tried to ask about Elena, every face turned pale. One old fisherman only muttered, "That name belongs to the sea now." On the third night, Michael couldn't sleep. The waves outside were whispering louder, not crashing, not roaring, whispering. He opened the window and froze. The ocean glowed faintly, silver blue, as if moonlight was rising from beneath the surface instead of shining down. And faintly, beneath the hum of the tide, he heard her. "Michael, do you remember?" He stumbled back, heart pounding. It couldn't be. She was gone. He buried her 100 times across 100 lifetimes, but the voice was so close it fogged the glass. He ran out to the beach barefoot, the cold sand biting his feet. The sea stretched wide, endless, silent, until he looked down. At the edge of the shore, the waves were pulling something toward him, small, white, shimmering. It was a photograph, burnt at the edges. The same one. Elena in her white dress, smiling by the lighthouse. Only now, her eyes were open, and they were watching him. He dropped it, stumbling back. "No, no, no!" The waves surged forward, as if alive, swallowing the photo whole. He turned to run, but the water followed, curling around his ankles like hands. "You promised." Her voice from the sea, from inside his chest, from everywhere at once. Michael fell to his knees, the tide rising higher, his breath shaking. "I let you go. I did what you asked." "Then why did you come back?" He froze. He didn't know how to answer, because he had nowhere else to go, because the silence hurt more than the curse, because every time he closed his eyes, he saw her dying again and again. And maybe, deep down, he wanted the sea to remember. The water crept higher, touching his hands. It was warm now, almost gentle. "Every time you come back," her voice murmured, "you think you're saving me, but you're the one who's drowning." He shook his head violently. "No, I'm not. Look." And the sea obeyed her. The surface shifted, turning clear as glass, and beneath it, he saw himself. Not the man standing there, another one, wearing a keeper's coat, lantern in hand, face hollow and wet with rain. Then another and another, 100 versions, layered like ghosts beneath the surface, each of them staring back, each holding a light that burned too bright to see through. "How many times, Michael?" she asked softly. "How many times will you die for the same memory?" The reflections began to move, their lanterns flickering. The sound of waves turned to whispers. The keepers spoke as one. "She waits. The light never dies. We are the storm." Michael clutched his head, screaming, "Stop it, please." The sea answered with a single wave that struck like thunder, dragging him under, cold, silent, endless. When he opened his eyes, he wasn't underwater. He was inside the lighthouse again. Except this time, it wasn't crumbling. It was alive. The walls pulsed faintly. like breathing skin. The lantern above turned slowly, its light moving through the air like a heartbeat. He looked down and saw Elena, not as a ghost, not as memory, but as light, her body made of the same glow that burned in the tower's heart. "Welcome home," she whispered. He reached for her hand. It burned, but he didn't care. "Is this death?" She smiled faintly. "No, this is remembrance." The light grew brighter, the sea outside howling like applause. "Every soul that forgets becomes part of the light. You kept coming back because you were already part of it." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Then let it end." Elena's smile faded. "It doesn't end, it changes." She leaned closer, her voice now just a breath in his ear. "When the next storm comes, you'll guide them home." The tower trembled. The beam of light burst through the storm clouds above, cutting through the world like dawn itself. And in that moment, Michael finally understood. He wasn't the man who kept returning. He was the light that never stopped searching. The storm had long passed, but the sea never forgot. Years later, the lighthouse still stood, tall against the edge of the world, its white walls cracked but proud, its glass eye blind by day, blazing by night. No one tended it, no one dared, yet somehow the light never went out. The locals called it the Widow's Beacon. Some said it guided lost ships, even when no fire burned inside. Others said, on quiet nights, you could hear laughter or weeping coming from the upper deck. No one stayed there long enough to prove it, until the new keeper arrived. Her name was Anna Reed, a marine researcher from the mainland. Young, quiet, carrying more questions than years. She came not for legend, but for data. The light, she said, was impossible. A power source without fuel. She wanted to study it, to understand it. The locals warned her, that tower doesn't need a keeper. It has one. She smiled politely and stayed anyway. The first night was ordinary, almost. She unpacked, set up her instruments, wrote her field notes by the dim lantern glow. But when she turned off her recorder, she realized the air was never silent. There was always a faint hum, a deep vibration coming from the walls, like the tower was breathing. At midnight, she climbed the spiral staircase, her flashlight cutting through the dust. Halfway up, she heard it. Footsteps. Not hers. 2 pairs. Soft, bare. She froze. "Hello?" Silence. Then whispers. "You came back." The words rode the wind, echoing through the beam chamber. Anna's breath hitched. She reached the top and found the lens, glowing faintly, though there was no flame inside, just a gentle pulsing light. When she reached out to touch it, warmth spread through her fingers, not from heat, but from memory. A whisper followed, faint and fragile. "Don't be afraid." She stumbled back, heart racing. "Who's there?" The light flickered. For just a second, she saw them, a man and a woman, standing hand in hand beside the lantern. The man's eyes full of sorrow and peace, the woman's hair like moving light, and then gone. Anna backed away, gasping, No, that's impossible." But the tower answered with a single rhythmic pulse, the same heartbeat she'd heard in the ocean since childhood, the same one she'd dreamed of every night she'd ever seen the sea. And suddenly, she remembered a dream, a fire, a promise, a voice saying, "When the next storm comes, you'll guide them home." The world tilted. The sea roared outside as if hearing her thoughts. She ran to the window and froze. The storm had returned. The waves were rising again, furious and alive. Lightning split the horizon. Ships tossed like toys on black water. And above it all, the lighthouse blazed, brighter than it ever had before. Anna grabbed the railing as wind screamed through the tower. No, this can't be happening. But deep inside the roar came a voice, calm, ancient, familiar. "It's time." The lens turned by itself, the beam sweeping across the sea. One by one, the ships began to turn, following the light, finding safety in its glow. Anna's tears mixed with the rain. "I can't do this." "You already are." She looked up, and there they were again. Michael and Elena, faint as moonlight, standing at the heart of the beam. "Every lifetime, someone must keep the light," Elena whispered. "And now, it's you." Anna fell to her knees, trembling. "Why me?" Michael's voice was soft. "Because you remembered." Outside, the storm broke open, the sea screaming, the wind bowing before the beam. The light expanded, swallowing the tower in white fire, stretching beyond time and tide. When the morning came, the lighthouse still stood, untouched, but Anna was gone. Only her notebook remained on the table downstairs. The last line written in hurried ink. "The light doesn't burn fuel, it burns memory." That night the sailors swore the beacon shone twice as bright, and if you listened closely between the waves and the wind, you could hear 3 voices now, guiding, calling, waiting. You came back, we remember. The light never dies. And so the legend grew of a tower that breathes, a sea that dreams, and 3 souls who love too much to let the dark take them. Some say the lighthouse still glows brightest during the fiercest storms. Others claim, if you stand beneath it long enough, you'll hear your own name whispered back by the waves, because in the end, every promise finds its way home, and every light remembers who it was meant to guide. The ocean was endless that night, black glass stretching in every direction, the stars above half swallowed by fog. Captain Jonas Hale stood at the bow of his fishing trawler, the mariner's wake, staring into the mist where no horizon existed. The radar blinked uselessly, the compass spun without purpose. They had been adrift for hours, maybe days. Time moved strange in the fog. Behind him, the crew murmured nervously. One whispered, "This is where it happens. The place the maps don't name." Another spat overboard, muttering, "The Widow's Beacon." Jonas frowned. Superstition. But even as he said it, the sea grew colder. The waves stilled, like they were holding their breath. And then a sound, a low hum. Not thunder, not wind, something deeper, something alive. From far off in the fog, a light began to pulse, faint, distant, rhythmic, like a heartbeat beneath the water. "Land!" one of the crew shouted, but it wasn't land. It was the lighthouse, the Widow's Beacon. Jonas felt his stomach twist. Every sailor on the coast knew the legend, a light that burned without fire, that guided the lost, and sometimes kept them. Still, in the dark, that glow was salvation. "Head for it," he ordered. The ship groaned as it turned toward the light. The fog thickened, wrapping around the deck like hands. Every breath felt heavier than the last. The closer they came, the louder the hum grew, now mixed with faint voices. At first he thought it was the wind. Then the words became clear. "You came back, we remember. The light never dies." The men froze. "Who said that?" someone whispered. Jonas shouted over the storm, "Hold steady." But even his voice trembled. Then the light flared. It wasn't white anymore. It was golden, burning like memory, painting the waves in warmth that felt human, and through it Jonas saw them. A man and a woman standing at the top of the tower, hand in hand. The man's face solemn, the woman's eyes endless, like the sea itself. Behind them, a third figure, a young woman with hair like flickering flame, notebook clutched to her chest. Jonas blinked, breath catching. The air tasted like salt and sorrow. The youngest crewman whispered, "That's them, Michael, Elena, and the new keeper." Jonas turned sharply. "You believe that nonsense?" But the boy's eyes filled with tears. "Captain, they're calling us." And then the sea moved. A wave rose, not to drown, but to lift, to carry. The ship tilted upward, rising on water that glowed from beneath. Every rope, every nail sang with vibration. The air pulsed like a living heartbeat. Jonas grabbed the rail, shouting into the wind, "What do you want from us?" And the sea answered, softly, like a sigh that had waited 100 years. "Remember." The fog split open, and before them the lighthouse stood whole and alive, its beam touching the sky. For a moment, Jonas felt everything: love, grief, eternity flooding through him. He saw flashes, a man drowning to save a woman burning for light, another reborn to guide. The beam swept across the mariner's wake, and every man fell silent. When they blinked again, the sea was calm, the fog was gone, the lighthouse too, only open water and dawn. The compass was steady now, the radar clear, no one spoke. Jonas walked to the edge of the deck, staring into the horizon where the light had been. Floating there was something small, a seashell, gleaming faintly. He picked it up and held it to his ear. Inside, the ocean whispered, "Every promise finds its way home." He smiled, tears in his eyes. "Then guide us home." And somewhere, far beyond the reach of men, the Widow's Beacon flickered once, faint, eternal, before sinking back into the sea. Epilogue. To this day, sailors speak of a light that appears only during the worst storms, a pulse that feels like a heartbeat. Some say it guides them home, others say it calls them back. No one knows for sure. But when the sea grows dark and thunder walks the waves, every sailor whispers the same prayer, not to God, not to fate, but to the 3 who never left. Michael, Elena, Anna. Keep the light, because the ocean remembers, and love, true love, never fades. It simply changes its shape until it finds its way home.